Well, Woody, thank you. And thanks to all of you for still being here after, 3 days now? And you've seen a steady lineup of people who are heroes and heroines in this movement and the effort to save the planet. Wendell Berry and Vandana Shiva and Joel Salatin and Vicki Robin and Amy Dominy and Gary Nabhan. Yeah, I know, I'm getting to that. And I've got 20 minutes. And what I'd like to do, in long story short, is to talk about getting this to scale and getting it quickly to scale. So I'm going to tell a story about what we've been doing in Oberlin and around the Lake Erie Crescent. And in a way, this is a proposal for a marriage of sorts between slow money and the efforts of building regional clusters. And I'll explain that as I go. If you didn't read the IPCC summary report, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report that came out a week or 10 days ago, read it. It is the best distillation of the science on climate change. What it means for all of us in this room is really two things. One is time is really short. We have no more time for errors and this kind of Australian walkabout that we've done in national politics. We've got to move very quickly. And for those of you who are actually farmers and have your hands in the dirt, it's going to change everything about how you grow, what you grow. And for all of us as eaters, it's going to change where we buy it from. And I'll explain that, but you already know that. The goal of the work here was summarized in a wonderful essay by Wendell Berry years ago called Solving for Pattern. And so the subtext of what I'm going to say is that we've been doing these movements. We have a renewable energy movement and a sustainable agriculture movement and a green building movement, environmental education movement, and so forth. And they operate as silos. And what we're trying to understand is how we begin to link these up into patterns and take it to scale as a system concept, where 2 + 2 is 22, not just 4. So with that, let me start with Economics 101. This was the cover of Time magazine in 1999. And these were the 3 guys that Time suggested could save the world. They did a heck of a job, didn't they? And they're still more or less at it. Now, I want to ask, this is audience participation time. I'm going to just nominate one guy here. Let's say, we'll take him out of here, and we'll put Woody Tash up there. How about that? So we got a different trio here. Woody's number 1. Now, who do you want for number 2? Shout it out. Wendell Berry? Agreed? All right. We've just eliminated Summers. So Robert Rubin over here. Vandana Shiva? We've got a new group to save the world. All right. Economics 101. All right, let's get down to work. That's where I live. This is well, I need to go back here and I can't go back. Anyway, that was a town. They gave me the one that has one green button here, which means I only go forward. And that was kind of a hint. Don't delay, because I'm the thing standing between you and Woody and the cocktail hour and supper. And this is not a good place for me to be. So anyway, that was Oberlin, Ohio. And I'll show you where it is in just a minute. It's about 14 miles south of Lake Erie, on a straight line across Lake Erie. Detroit's 84 miles off to the northwest. Cleveland's 35 miles to the east. Youngstown's another hour off to the east. Toledo, Ohio's off to the west. It's Rust Belt. And we have a poverty level of about 25, 28%, give or take, depends who does the counting and what the economy is like at that particular time. Now, the story starts here. This is level 1. Back in 1995, we organized an effort to build an environmental studies center and to make it basically at the platinum scale, but there was no U.S. Green Building Council rating system at that time. So this is the Adam Joseph Lewis Center. Last year, it generated 144% of its power from sunshine. Now, we're in Ohio, we're in northern Ohio, where sunshine is kind of a theory. People have heard about it. They don't much see it. There has been an effort to bottle sunshine in Florida and ship it north to Ohio. Actually, we're even sunnier. We're just a little sunnier than all of Germany, which is the #1 solar country in the world. That's true. So this is the Lewis Center. This is the wastewater treatment system. It looks like a big tropical greenhouse. So you flush the toilet and the water comes in and we purify it, not quite the drinking water standards, but it's reusable standards. This is a John Todd designed living machine. So the building was named by the American Institute of Architects a few years ago as the most important green building of the past 30 years. But it's just a building. Powered by sunshine, releases no waste product, uses minimum or actually almost no toxic materials. The people that worked on it were the McDonough firm and Amory Lovins and people from NASA and so forth, and 250 Oberlin students. So the deal was, if you wanted to work on a building, you had to work with Oberlin students in making this thing a reality. So they did. So we had hundreds of students work on the original building, and about 50 or so work on this project all year long as it evolves. But the most important thing about this, buildings and changing infrastructure is important, but the real purpose of green building is to change how we think. And working and living in a green building, you can begin to visualize the future in a very different way if you can actually see it, touch it, feel it, and experience it. And about 70% of our sensory apparatus, I'm told, is in our eyes or connected to visual. So we're inclined to privilege that part of what we do. Now, that was the start. We've taken, that's one building, an acre and a quarter site, 14,200 square foot building, powered by sunshine. The question we're asking is, could you then take that up to the scale of a small city? Oberlin's a city of about 10,000. Again, poverty level, give or take a quarter or so. So the idea was to take this up to scale in the Oberlin project. Can you take all of our ideas to scale now and begin to get this at a level that really does matter? So the idea of rebuilding the local community, and I'm not going to read the slide, but rebuilding the local economy, make it fair, green, clean, safe, and prosperous for everybody. So it's as much of an equity issue as it is, and if you do all the things right over here, then environment, actually you're looking at it a different way. On the right-hand side, the equal marks, environment is the outcome of getting all the other stuff done right. So the idea is to make this like an equation where environment becomes kind of the default outcome. Oh, by the way, we're sustainable and clean and green and so forth. Now, this simply depicts the way we've gone about this movement, I think, is a series of silos. And we don't much talk back and forth to each other. So the idea that behind the Oberlin project, we call it full spectrum sustainability. It's just a fancy way to say you're going to have lunch with lots of different kinds of people. So you farm people need to talk to economists and business people and educators and so forth, because if you want to make local foods the big deal, you better start working with educators to change what kids learn in school, because they do not any longer learn things that relate to soil and animals and plants and seasons and so forth. So you've got to have educators at the table. You better have, and farming's expensive. In our part of the world, $500,000 doesn't really buy you a farm. It buys you kind of a big lot. And so if you want to get into agriculture in a serious way, you've got to have access to capital. So you need capital and financiers at the table. You got to have buyers and markets. So you have to have the business cycle and the business people there attending to you. And so you got to have a lot of people at the table to do one simple thing, develop a local foods economy. So anyway, that's the purpose of this. This is how we've organized the community. Lots of different groups. Most all of this relates to economic development in one way or another. So with local foods, the idea is to begin to do local foods in a way that connects with other parts of the community, including education and finance and jobs and employment. For us, the driver in the project has been a downtown economy that was pretty moribund. We're a typical little Ohio college town, so if you sold beer, coffee, and pizza, you're doing fine. If you're selling anything else, you're in trouble or you're out of business. So the idea is to begin to drive the economy in a way that lifts everybody. And can you make a sustainable economy in a little town right in the middle of the Rust Belt? And can you make that a model for the way the rest of the cities in the Rust Belt can actually do the same thing? For us, a hotel was the important part of the project. So a lot of circumstances I don't have time to get into, but the idea of a hotel powered entirely by sunshine. This will be the first entirely solar-powered, possibly zero-discharge hotel conference center, as far as I know, anywhere in the world. It's in Ohio. We want to run a restaurant there that trains chefs. So we're in a partnership. We're working on a partnership in the final phase of a partnership contract with a local two-year college that has a culinary school. And then we want that restaurant to buy local foods. It is a driver in the local food economy. So if you grow it or process it within the local region, you buy it locally within the downtown economy. So this is the artist's rendition of the hotel. This was what the site looked like. We actually broke ground on it. We've got Maya Lin is going to do a sculpture for us on the hotel, and we need to raise a little bit of money for that. Woody, is it okay to raise money for a Maya Lin sculpture? We'll have an altar call at the end of this. Woody didn't comment, so I guess it is. Anyway, this is the excavation site a couple days ago. This is a $17 million project that is just adjacent to the site that was done by 3 former Oberlin students, an amazing story. This is LEED Gold rated. This is the first of several passive solar, entirely solar houses. This one is one we broke ground on 3 weeks ago. It is passive solar, no energy bill, done at an affordable price and sold to a woman with 2 children whose income is below the poverty line. And it's affordable. She will own, this is the first of what we hope is a development of 50 or so carbon positive or entirely homes without any energy bill at all. This is an 11-acre solar array, 3.2 megawatt output. It's a tracking array, and we're part of the Clinton Climate Initiative. We're one of the 4 cities that have been named as participant or reached participant status in the Clinton Climate Initiative. We've been rolled into the C40 cities. You know, there are all these big cities, and down, the little one way down at the bottom on the next page is Oberlin, a little city of 10,000. We're not even a good-sized building in Beijing. Now, here's the question. Can we take this, your work, my work, and the work of lots of other people, up to scale? So the idea from a building to a small city up to a region. This is the Lake Erie Crescent Project. I don't have Flint, Michigan up here, but Flint sits up here. The mayor of Flint told me that his tax base drops 20% per year. That's a city in free fall. You've all read about Detroit, and you'll see one other graphic on Detroit. Toledo's not much better. Cleveland's a bit better, but these are all industrial cities in which we disinvested. We took the money away from them, we moved people out in the suburbs, and they collapsed. We outsourced jobs and sent employment elsewhere. The question is, do we know enough to begin to rebuild an economy? So the Lake Erie Crescent runs all the way over to Youngstown, Ohio. Now, these are the things that we're trying to do. And this is, I'm not going to read the slide, but this is, how many of you have read Jane Jacobs? Her name is familiar. All right, for those of you who didn't, I'm a former professor. For those of you who didn't, your reading assignment is look up Jane Jacobs. Don't go to Amazon. Go to your local bookstore and order Jane Jacobs. Now, she wrote 2 books you need to know about. One is The Life, or The Death and Life of Great American Cities. The other is a little book called The Economy of Cities. And in that book, she says national economies don't grow. What grows are city regions. And city regions grow, and as they grow, they do a very simple process. They start importing stuff or substituting what they used to import for things that are grown or processed or serviced locally. So the long and the short is if you grow it, process it, service it, or add value to it locally, you buy it locally. You don't buy it from China, you don't buy your food from California. Now, this is important for us, for all of you, because we will not, in Ohio, import enough food at a price we could afford from California to meet the needs of a pretty well-populated state. We're going to have to reinvent agriculture in Ohio and everywhere else around the world. Long-distance imports of food is going to reach an end. It'll peak. Stephen Chu said this in March of 2009, the former Secretary of Energy, and he was a California native or California resident. And Stephen Chu said the year of imported agriculture is over in California. And the drought there just locks that position in. So this is Jane Jacobs 101. So import substitution. And the strategy we've got is roughly this. I work for the Cleveland Foundation in part. We have an office at Case Western University, so we have 2 anchors at either end of Euclid Avenue, which was Millionaires Row way back when. The idea is very simply to have the foundations, have moneyed interest, convene meetings of the people who run big organizations. We're targeting on 3. Educational organizations, so big universities, small colleges, 2-year colleges. Secondly, sports teams. There are 7 big league sports teams in the region, and thirdly, big hospital clusters, of which there are 5 in the region. And the idea is very simply, move $1 billion of funding that's already in play. They already buy food and energy and build infrastructure. Those are the 3 targets. Move it from the brown side of the ledger to the green side of the ledger. So begin to substitute local assets, local resources, local sunshine, local ingenuity for things that are imported from a long distance. Now, the beauty of this is very simply this. This is a picture taken from the owner of the Cleveland Indians box, and this is kind of a side note. Just imagine as sports teams. This is the big scoreboard. Imagine that scoreboard reporting percentage of local food being served in the stadium. Imagine the announcer coming on and saying the ballpark franks are made from local roadkill, not imported roadkill. Imagine us saying that this facility is powered X% by current sunshine, not ancient fossil fuels. So sports teams. Now this is kind of like putting salt in the stew. It changes, it's not necessarily large by volume or dollar volume, but it changes the flavor of the thing. It gets the sports crowd, which is not necessarily well represented here, gets them into sustainability in the easy possible way. So this is Detroit. This is a map that was in the New York Times. Everything in red is vacant or decayed property. Now, this is where urban food needs to come in. This was a city that once was home to 2.1 million people. Now it's a little bit under 700,000, I'm told. This is a city, 140 square miles, that you could fit Boston and Manhattan and San Francisco in that 140 square miles and have room for 10 or so Oberlins left over. So that's our opportunity. So agriculture doesn't necessarily need to happen in rural areas. It also can happen, as all of you know, in urban spaces and on rooftops, and begin to make low carbon food close to where it's consumed and produced. Now, I want to close with a couple of thoughts. The strategy here is old, nothing new. We're not asking the federal government to do anything. The federal government, thanks to the politics, and we'll get into this, that causes a hissy fit, and that's not what I need to do. But right and left are at loggerheads. I won't get into the rights and wrongs of that, but they're at loggerheads. The thing that connects all of us in the room and all of them on all sides is the future. It's how we relate to the future. It's not left and right. Some people make a very good living dividing us left and right. But the real division is our generation versus future generations. So the beauty of this is we don't need federal support at this time. A congressperson came to tour what we're doing and asked what he could do, and I said, not one thing. You stay out of this. This is not for you. You stay away from this because people like us can make this work. Now, this is only bottom up. At some time, you're going to need top down. We need a carbon tax. We need it desperately. We should have had it 10 or 20 years ago. But we'll take it when we can get it. But in the meantime, let's start to organize at this scale. So the beauty of this is nothing new. This is already money in play. There's roughly $1 billion more or less already being spent for infrastructure and food and renewable energy and efficiency. Let's begin to use money already in play. And there's the three waves we're surfing are already in motion. Local foods, as you know, is booming. The demand is greater than the supply. Renewable energy, when we installed this PV array 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago, the cost of photovoltaics has dropped by another 40 or 50% since we installed that array. So the installed watt cost has plummeted. Green urban infrastructure, young people the kids I taught, they don't want to live in the suburbs. They want to be downtown Louisville, downtown Cleveland, downtown Denver, close to service-rich environments, coffee shops, entertainment, transportation lines, and so forth. So there's nothing new in this. This is Jane Jacobs 101. So this is two thoughts to conclude this. The Lake Erie Crescent is the first of the regional cluster models we're putting together. Can we take this movement to scale? Can we make the market for you and local foods and green energy and so forth and urban infrastructure, can we make it so vibrant by redirecting major money? Again, not new money. This is old money that's already in play. And then if we can do this, can we begin to organize regional clusters around the USA and possibly around the world? I just came back from Australia. There's interest all the way around the world in doing similar things where politics, in Australia's case like ours, the politics are log-jammed and not moving very far. So this is a grassroots rebellion. It's a declaration of independence, or is it interdependence? And of course, it's both. We're interdependent, but it's also independence from the oil companies that have every intention of burning all their remaining fossil fuels. Their business plan is to burn all that. And as Bill McKibben points out, they can burn maybe a fifth of that and still give us a 50-50 chance of staying below the 2 degrees centigrade warming that science have told us that's the guardrail, don't go beyond that. And they will break no law because Congress in its inestimable wisdom has figured out that this is good business until they wreck the business called Earth and Earth systems. And so this is beginning to start the rebellion. Let's start it down here at the grassroots, and let's begin to figure out how smarter solutions work. This is Wendell Berry 101. This is the essence of that wonderful article, Solving for Pattern. If you haven't read that, go read it. It's in The Gift of Good Land, I think, if I remember correctly, or Home Economics, one of the two. So a couple other thoughts in conclusion. Number one, we're told by people who have every reason to know better, we're told that we can't afford to do this. You can't afford to buy local foods. It's great, good idea, wonderful, it's healthy, for, nourishing and so forth, but you can't afford to do it. And the point is, you can't afford not to. That we pay for sustainability whether we get it or not. That's economics 101. We pay whether we get it or not. And we pay in terms of war and disease and ill health and unemployment, but we pay. Second point in conclusion is this. This is a system, and we have to solve for system and solve for pattern. This is not just a farm problem or nutrition problem, a food problem. This is a civilizational problem. This is a systems crisis. So the invitation is to begin to link up with other movements and other people and other movements and begin to deal with this as a system response. And then finally, the rules of the game. Follow the money. Attorneys know this very well. If you see a problem, you can't understand why something happened, follow the money, and the money trail tells you why it occurred. Now, this is from, the final thought is simply this. This is Ann Whiston Spurn. It's a wonderful quote, and I'm not going to read it, but the quote simply says, it's time to tell new stories and honor the complexity and diversity and all the difficulties of our time. But this is a time for new stories. And I want to thank Woody in particular for starting a new story. Because the new story being told here is Woody is connected, and all of you are connected now as part of this effort, farm and food and nourishment with finance. And if we don't get the financial connection, we're never going to make it. But it's time for new stories, and a new story that you're all telling. We're rewriting history. It's happening here, and it's just beginning. It's going to explode. Thank you all for what you do. Thank you.